Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Nayab Zara and welcome to another episode of Trade Talk Season 2. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes international trade as an engine for inclusive economic growth and poverty reduction, and also an important means to achieve sustainable development goals. Pakistan, like many other nations, has been working towards streamlining its trade-related processes to create a more efficient and business-friendly environment. The Pakistan Single Window is a key component in this effort, aiming to simplify and harmonize the trade processes in line with Pakistan's commitment to the Trade Facilitation Agreement of the World Trade Organization. Our guest today joins us from Karachi. Mr. Mohammad Raza is the director and partner of Haji Khurshid and Company, which is an import-export business which has been operating since the 90s. Welcome to the Trade Talks podcast, Mr. Raza. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me, Nayab. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm fine, thank you. Very happy to have you here. Mr. Raza, as an international business that uses PSW as a system, what are your thoughts on how PSW is improving Pakistan's integration into the global value chain through the digitization of trade-related processes?
The PSW has made us very efficient. It has revolutionized the way we do business. Previously, pre-PSW, we had a lot of manual documentation that needed to be there. We had to contact at least 4 to 6 various departments to get various documents attested, various payments done, and the list keeps going on. There were more hindrances than favorable circumstances. But now with PSW, when things are getting integrated, my bank, my customs, my clearing agent, my labs, my fumigation companies, everything, just to give you an example of few, is under one roof. So that has increased our efficiency, that has gotten rid of the red tape, that has gotten rid of all the impediments that were there. So PSW, like I said, it's revolutionizing the way cross-border trade is done. It has to lead to information sharing to close more loopholes that are there in cross-border trade between Pakistan and other countries. So it is highly recommended that anyone who, I don't think there's anyone who's not on PSW who's doing cross-border trade, but anyone who does not understand PSW right now, I would suggest that they go online, they go to YouTube, they see a couple of videos to understand what exactly PSW is, and they will realize themselves that the impact it will have in terms of their efficiency, it's phenomenal.
PSW is indeed about simplification of cross-border trade and improving the ease of doing business and regulatory compliance, and as you mentioned, increasing the efficiency of international trade. Now, PSW is a digital platform solely built on ICT, which requires some degree of technical knowledge. Now, if we were to zoom out a bit, what do you think Pakistan's journey has been like in terms of ICT?
Okay, so it's been a very long journey for Pakistan in terms of ICT, information communication and technology. Um, if you go back maybe 20 years, the flow of information was very restricted. Technology was just taking its phase, and the dot com boom was just starting in to affect Pakistan as a country. But I would say that the past 10-15 years, the pace has picked up and things have started rolling much faster. The information flow is now more transparent and things are getting better. And this is very much evident from um, if you were to speak to any businessman and today, they would tell you that business today is now much faster, much quicker, and much more efficient than what it used to be maybe 15 years ago. And obviously, that's not just true to Pakistan; it's happening all over the world. So Pakistan is trying to keep up with the pace of the global technology, and I feel that we're picking up the pace, and very soon I feel that we would be at par with very developed nations in the world in terms of technology and information exchange.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Mr. Raza. It is really interesting to see the impact ICT has had on everyday lives in the country. Could you perhaps also please share some initiatives and the impact they've had on businesses and consumers in Pakistan?
It's to name any single thing or a few things would be wrong. It's an entire process whereby, um, the first thing that we should discuss is digital efficiency when it comes to information flow. Now, I remember when I was a student, we used to connect to the internet via telephone lines and modems. That was the trend all over the world. Now you have broadband, so obviously anything that used to be done in like 5 minutes now takes maybe 10 seconds. So the information flow has helped consumers and businesses. So this will always be, a top down approach. It will start affecting businesses. Businesses will become more competitive, and eventually, based on that information flow and technology, things would start coming down towards the consumers. Now, the consumers have choices, they have social media, they have online, everything is available to them at the tip of their fingertips. So, I think that, the impact is so huge that to quantify it or to say that anything in particular has, if you were to ask me what's the one thing, the general answer anyone would give you would be the internet. But obviously everything revolves around the internet now, so I would just say that just the flow of information and the choices that the consumer has now based on that flow of information is what has made life easier and simpler for everybody.
Mr. Raza, if we were to zoom back in on startups and SMEs, where do you think Pakistan stands when it comes to supporting them?
Okay, this is one field where I feel that Pakistan needs to work harder in terms of its startups. So I'll just give you an example. Startup is relatively a bigger word. Let's use the word freelancers. So when you have to sit and talk to a freelancer today, it's very easy for them to go online and pick up projects where they would make maybe a couple of $100. But the problem that Pakistani freelancers are facing right now is that of payments. There is no international payment mechanism through which they can be paid. That is something that the government definitely needs to look at. For example, if there is a freelancer who decides to build a website for someone for say $200, so now to receive those $200 for him is a big problem, and that is becoming an impediment to his growth. If he goes to the bank, he will require a lot of documents, even if it's just $200. He does. We do not have networks like PayPal. PayPal is a perfect example which is being used by freelancers and startups all over the world to manage their payments. Now, this was about freelancers. When you say startups, I feel that, there is a general lack of um, funding for startups within Pakistan. The government needs to establish some sort of startup fund. It can be done with the help of some private entity. I'll give you an example. For example, the Rozgar schemes that were introduced by the government, they were giving money to people who wanted to start their businesses, but the due diligence in that scheme was, let's just say, it was not up to the mark. Now, if you have a something like a Pakistan startup fund, whereby there can be proper due diligence by an entity that is equipped to do that due diligence, to study the feasibility, to study the business idea. Now, if that business idea is backed by, for example, a private entity which is credible and reliable, then an investor would be a lot more confident in investing into such a startup. For example, if you have a big chartered accountancy firm that is employed by the government to do the feasibilities for these projects, and that chartered accountancy firm backs a particular project, then you can only imagine the amount of money that startup can gather for as funding. They don't need to go abroad. They don't need to go and sell their project to XYZ, someone abroad. Why should they? Pakistan has enough people who can fund these entrepreneurs, and this sort of growth will have a bottom up effect on the economy. And again, there needs to be a mechanism whereby these startups are evaluated and the funding is arranged for them. I think that is one place that we are lacking as a nation.
Those are some truly interesting insights, Mr. Raza. I especially like the thought where you mentioned that supporting SMEs in the right way will have a bottom up impact on Pakistan's economy. As mentioned at the start of today's episode, that international trade is an engine for economic growth and poverty reduction, and also an important means to achieve sustainable development goals. Are there any best practices or international case studies that would provide to be a practical example for Pakistan to look at regarding the digitization of international trade?
Digitization of trade, I think Pakistan's single window has been a big milestone that Pakistan has achieved in terms of digitization of trade. One country that I feel that is an example not just for Pakistan but globally, they have been receiving the top digitized country award for the past 3 years at the World Economic Forum. That is Singapore. Now, Singapore is a very small country. Obviously, their literacy rate is very high, so that really helps in digitization. But I feel that we can take Singapore as an example, their adaptability to technology. Now, there is a term that we need to understand here, that which is called the technology divide. Until and unless we are able to inculcate or communicate the technology in people, or the use of technology, get rid of that fear in people's head, provide training to move more towards digitization, um, we cannot be more digitized as a nation. For example, let's just start with communications and internet. There are so many places, there are so many areas, in even in big cities, where uh, broadband is not there. If broadband is not there, the mobile service internet, it usually it gets in Pakistan, it gets interrupted. There would be jammers. There are so many impediments to communication, that it creates a gap. It creates a sort of a fear amongst people in terms of digitization. If you would still meet people who are hiring others to do digital tasks for them. For example, I know of some businesses who are hiring others to use PSW for them. Now, that is a lack of training, that is a lack of communication on the part of the government. That why does a person need to hire an external company to help them use a digital platform? So I think what Singapore has done is that they have made it easier, and they have given incentives. To give you an example, more than 98% of the trade in Singapore last year was digital. So imagine the effects on the economy. You are finishing the cash economy, you are finishing the black economy. Everything is available online. May it be paying via their phone for grocery, or may it be buying real estate through an online portal. So we need to benchmark that level of digitization, so that we can achieve that in a few years. If I want to go buy a house, I should be able to complete the entire transaction digitally. I mean, this is what happens in developed countries. I do not need to go and meet the buyer and the seller. Of course, I go need to go see the house, but at the end of the day, the entire transaction, I do not need to visit six departments to have things transferred, to have things done. I just need to transfer the money to a third party, which will then transfer it to the buyer. This is how things work globally. Why do we need to? We need to benchmark such digitization, so that we can move forward, and in the next few years we can reach that benchmark.
Okay. Mr. Raza, as someone who uses technology and the single window system to support your business, what do you think are the challenges in promoting your business through digital technologies in cross border trade?
Okay, so single window, like I said, has revolutionized the way we do cross-border trade for our imports and exports. More and more institutions, banks, fumigation companies, labs, whatever we need for our products to get exported out of Pakistan, or some products to get imported into Pakistan, is all now being put in PSW, single window platform. That has made our efficiency much better. However, I just feel that the pace of getting institutions on board PSW needs to speed up. It will finish more impediments and more problems that are there in terms of trade. As far as trade portals are concerned, I feel that our embassies and our commercial counselors abroad need to play more of a role. I'll give you an example. For example, whenever there's an inquiry for XYZ product from a particular country, they would email for example, if it's for textiles, they would email the textile association, and dissemination of information can take up to a week. Until that time, that order gets closed. They buy it from somebody else. So instead of that, if we use a trade portal where exporters are registered, importers are registered, the commercial counselors can help register importers in their particular countries. So I think that can help. And eventually, I feel that the world is now going towards data sharing. Single window is also a step towards data sharing. So eventually, what I see in 20 years is that, for example, if I'm exporting something to the United States, then there is no need for me to exchange documents with my buyer or my customer, because all the documents would be already on the online platform. I will again give the example of Singapore. The amount of time it takes for goods to get cleared at Singapore port is 1.2 to 1.5 days. The reason is that they have everything digitally already available. They have systems that are already evaluating those documents, and based on that, the clearance of good happens. Now, imagine the amount of efficiency that this increases for both the buyer and the seller. So I just feel that single window needs to incorporate more and more users and more departments that are involved in cross-border trade. And eventually, single window will and has to lead towards data sharing with respective countries.
We are learning quite a bit today from your thoughts, Mr. Raza. Singapore is a great case study, and I do believe that PSW is well on their way to achieve similar custom clearance times by reducing time, cost, and complexities associated with the clearance processes. What, in your perspective, needs to be done to help usher in digitization of cross border trade and to foster inclusive economic growth on a national level?
Digital literacy and digital divide. These are two key words that need to be addressed. The digital literacy, or fear of using digitization or communication, has to be abolished amongst not just the middle or upper middle class, but also the lower middle class of this nation. We have a lot of people, we have a great percentage of the people that are actually even below the poverty line. So the question arises is that they are below the poverty line. How can they move towards digitization? My answer to that is that today you go outside, you go to a small fruit vendor who's alhamdulillah making his ends meet. He knows how to use WhatsApp. He knows how to take pictures. He knows how to send those pictures. So if he knows this, why can't he be able to check prices of his goods online? Of course he can. So there is just a fear, and there is lack of credibility of the information being provided, based on which people are a lot of people, at least in our country, they do not trust digitization. So I just feel that for sustainable development, the digital literacy in this country needs to be increased, and this needs to start from the lower level. The upper middle class, they would know everything about digital literacy because they're already using it, but they're a very small percentage of the population. The majority of the population is your low tier population. If you can inculcate digitization amongst those people, I think that you can achieve milestones. One more thing I'd like to point out here is that technology is the only service in the world that can help our country get out of the economic problems that we are facing. Let's just look at our exports. We are primarily an agricultural country, so we are growing some products for export. We cannot double the growth of, for example, rice. If we are producing 9.5 million tons of rice, we and exporting about 2.5 billion, we cannot take this to 10 billion because we have limited land. We can maybe take it to 3 4 billion, but technology is something for which you just need human resource. So if the digitization pace of this country moves fast, then the impact that technology and technology exports can have on the economy is unimaginable. It is something that can drive this country out of every economic problem and help us move forward. We need to digitize all our services locally as well. Like I said, we need to set a benchmark like Singapore. Agriculture needs to be more digitized. Healthcare needs to be more digitized. Payment platforms need to be more digitized. So when you use the word sustainable development, I think sustainability in technology has everything to do with digital literacy.
And that concludes the conversation for today. Mr. Raza, it has been a delight speaking to you, and thank you for sharing all very real insights with us. Thank you, everyone that watched today's episode. Please do share your thoughts in the comment section below. Until next time, Khuda Hafiz.